This is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. First, though, our top stories. A mother and a chef have died days after separate attacks at Notting Hill Carnival. Oasis fans have complained after the website to buy tickets for the band's reunion tour crashed. And the SNP has said there will be difficult days ahead in Scotland under the Labour government. Hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with former Conservative Special Advisor Anita Boateng and the broadcaster Joanna Jarjue. Now let's see what is on some of those front pages. Well, The Observer features new research which reveals that lengthy NHS waiting times mean most people expect to have to use private healthcare for routine treatments. The Express reports on warnings from landlords that the government's tough crackdown on outdoor smoking could trigger violent clashes outside pubs. The Telegraph says teaching unions are calling on the government to cut down the number of tests in primary schools to help curb pupil anxiety. The Times reports on the government's pledge to crack down on what they call an absence epidemic in schools. The Mirror reports on plans by Netflix to release a new documentary about child serial killer Lucy Letby. And the Mail on Sunday leads with an exclusive which claims Prince Harry has sought advice from former aides to help plan his return from the United States. And online Supernova reads the Sunday People after millions scramble to secure their place at the Oasis reunion tour, causing ticket websites to crash. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the program, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Anita Boateng and Joanna Jarjue. Thank you both so much for joining us. OK, let's go to The Observer, front page there. The NHS, one of the stories that I mentioned there in the review. NHS queues mean most people expect to go private. So it says the UK drifting towards a two-tier health system. And Anita, what's crucial about this is that it's not necessarily for emergency, situations like, I don't know, quite an aggressive cancer. It's routine procedures as well.
Yes, and really this is not about what people are actually doing, although, the Observer has some great detail about how nearly 900,000 people were admitted to private hospitals in 2023, which is a record. But it's about people's expectations. And so what you have in this is the Joseph Rowntree Foundation do focus groups, talking to different groups about what they think. And they expect, and there's been a kind of critical shift in expectations about whether or not they're going to be able to count on the NHS. And so this includes a sort of, people think that to have a decent living in the UK, they now need a £200 a year spending envelope for private healthcare. So £200 probably doesn't get you that far in private healthcare, but it shows a shift in expectations. And really, because of the seismic nature of the election, it's really up to the Labour government to show that they can repair, most importantly, the NHS. And that is one of the tests that there will be, that they will have to meet in order to successfully continue to be re-elected in the next election.
Joanna, what do you make of it? And does this research surprise you?
No, it doesn't surprise me at all. Obviously, for the last couple of years, all we've been talking about is the NHS waiting list. There's a lot of people, especially people who maybe would have just gone to their GP for something routine and maybe would have got a cancer diagnosis, have found themselves in hot water because of these waiting lists. And it's really a shame for the country because, the NHS is the thing that we take most pride in within the country, free at the point of use. But now people aren't even able to go for their normal checkups. And I completely agree that, this is going to be a big task for Labour. And it just shows that even though we've just got this new government, confidence hasn't really been restored, even though they're saying that they're going to have 40,000 more appointments in the NHS. And obviously Wes Streeting has been talking about using the private sector as well to alleviate some of that, those waiting lists. So it's going to be a big task to just change people's mindsets even, because I think that the confidence has definitely been ruined.
Just quickly about changing people's mindsets. In a lot of other European countries, some treatments, countries that are similar to us, that have, similar services are free, some treatments are actually, you pay for it. It's means tested, but if you can afford it, you'll pay £30 for a GP's appointment. Do you sense a shift in the UK when it comes to
Well,
this?
I think what's fascinating about what's happening in politics right now is there really is a sort of everything is wrong, so let's make incremental changes. And so what we're seeing right now is, the government in introducing this massive pay packet to try to curb, strikes, trying to tinker around the edges and bringing in a bit more private provision to really, but what is needed is a massive conversation about how we use our health system. We know that we're an ageing population. We know that treatments are getting more expensive and more sophisticated, and that's a very, very good thing. But the idea that a small group of people that will not be working people will pay additional taxes, which will fund an entirely new and positive investment post-COVID, I do not think stands. And I'm not sure Labour has a political strategy for addressing that change.
Well, you would think that, the Labour government would be the ones to kind of lead on what the public mood would be and kind of set an example. But obviously, famously, in the run-up to the general election, Keir Starmer said himself that he wouldn't use private healthcare if a family member was in dire need of it. So, that kind of just screams what the Labour Party is trying to do in terms of protecting what we love about the NHS and trying to basically reset the whole system, whether it takes. And I'm sure that it would be kind of difficult for them to kind of bite the bullet and use the private sector, but clearly our back's against the wall as a country.
I thought that was kind of odd when he said that. If a family member was in dire need, he still would never go private. I don't know. Unusual.
Let's take a look at the Sunday Express. Another plan by the Labour government. This is to possibly ban smoking outside. The Sunday Express obviously doesn't take too kindly to that possibility, because they're saying now that they could effectively create violence outside beer gardens that will be turned into bitter flashpoints. What's their reasoning for saying this? Well,
they're saying that people basically who don't want to adhere to this new law potentially could cause problems to other people as well as staff, and potentially create more crimes, especially in situations where it's outside football games. We know that as a country we do have a bit of a rowdy nature when it comes to drinking culture and pub culture. So I think that there's concern that there could be more crime and conflict, but it's not really surprising to hear this from the hospitality sector. They're not the industry that are going to welcome this. So I think any excuse they will kind of turn to create different potential problems that this could cause for the government.
Anita, what did you make of this story?
I don't think that hospitality is kind of, carping on for bad reasons, because ultimately the hospitality sector is in pieces. Nightclubs barely exist in London anymore, and you've got yet more disruption, and they haven't really ever recovered from COVID. And I think the big concern here really is about bar staff. So are bar staff going to enforce this? That's the challenge, right? Which is you've already got rowdy people that have been drinking, and you're saying, well, you can't smoke here, you have to smoke here. So I think that there is something here that the hospitality industry is concerned about. And personally, I don't know what bars and clubs that other people are going to, but in mine, we're basically legislating here for politeness. Most people, I do not like cigarette smoke, and I find myself easily able to avoid getting secondhand smoke, because most people, if they want to smoke, go away from people that aren't smoking. And I think that's the way it should work in a civilised society.
The reality is the people who would be, quote-unquote, policing this would be the door staff, and realistically, if you are in a very kind of busy nightclub or pub, you will have a member of the security staff who will say to you, you can smoke there, or no, actually, if you're not in the designated smoking area. So things like that do exist already, and I think people expect it. To kind of, some people might say that this might put people going on nights out. I don't think that that's the reality. If you want to go out and enjoy yourself, you'll still do it regardless.
Let's go to the United States. Front page of The Observer. Everyone's favourite feminist, Donald Trump's running mate, JD Vance, not happy with the... Was it crazy cat ladies or just cat ladies, basically? Now career women choose misery. But just cat ladies. And now career women choose misery. I mean, it is a strange... It depends what's behind the headline, but it's a strange tactic, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, this is all unearthed from years gone by, and I imagine that there is an Oppo research that's desperately trailing through all of JD Vance's interviews right around the time of Hillbilly Elegy and since, when he was forging a kind of promising-ish career. So this is from September of 2021, when he says that professional women choose a path to misery when they prioritise careers over having children.
Yeah.
It seems to be this, inferno of distracting and quite aggressive comments specifically at women that means that it detracts from a lot of the messages they want to land about the economy and the border. And I do wonder if Trump is regretting listening to his sons about the selection of JD Vance.
He does also mention men. He also said men and boys in the US were suppressed in their masculinity. I mean, you say they're unearthing comments from a while ago. This is September 2021.
Oh, no, he wasn't a child.
20 years ago.
Don't get me wrong. But I think what I'm saying is that ideally, he wouldn't want to be talking about these things during the campaign because you don't land your messages on policy. But nevertheless, he has said them. I mean, let's see what he says in response.
But also, why didn't they do their due diligence? But then one part of me also thinks, even if they did do their due diligence and knew that he'd already made these comments, I don't think that it would have put off the Trump campaign after some comments that Trump himself has made, grab them by the you-know-what. So I don't really think it kind of seems as if it's a match made in heaven, really. But, this doesn't help them, especially when they're trying to get the votes of suburban women. And I think that that's where Kamala Harris has really been in her messaging through her campaign, talking about women's rights to their body. And obviously we know about Trump overturning Roe v. Wade. This, in terms of the optics and the whole messaging, just does not land well for them as well.
It'll be interesting to see if she uses this when they have the debate in September 10th, so it'll be interesting to see how she plays it. OK, now let's go to the Sunday People front page. Oasis. Now, online supernova. Sites melt down in 14 million bids for Oasis tickets. Either one of you two were online this morning? No?
No. I feel like if it was Beyonce tickets, maybe I would have been straight to the front of the queue. But I don't even think I can name a single Oasis song.
Well, I know Champagne Supernova.
Oh, yeah, OK. Actually,
you're missing a lot of puns, if you remember. But still, though, it does seem to be creating a bit of a sensation, and loads of people were online. What have you made of the whole ticketing and the fact that there was this kind of surge pricing on the official website selling tickets?
Yeah, it's always so frustrating when this happens because I think in the UK we're better than, for instance, the US about ensuring we kind of deal with some of the ticket touting. And I know the government is talking about taking further steps to do that. But you do get this price inflation, which means that the kind of Uber fans are either with cold towels on their head and 16 different laptops set up, or they're paying extortionate prices to see the band. I think it's wonderful that people are so excited, but once again, it's with new technology, you get more and more frustrating that there isn't a way to ensure that this doesn't happen and that fans can get their tickets.
So one is ticket touting, but then there was this dynamic pricing within, the main two websites selling. A lot of fans are very angry about that.
Yeah, and I know that they were also talking about, if people were going to buy tickets that were resold, that they potentially wouldn't be able to use them. But with all this stuff about it, kind of reminds me of when people are trying to get Glastonbury tickets as well. And I think and correct me if I'm wrong, I hope I'm not offending anybody, but it seems like there's an older generation that obviously love Oasis. And I do kind of feel for some of them maybe who aren't as tech savvy and don't know all of the little, tips and tricks. No, but... Sorry, guys.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
But yeah, so maybe it's people who were more tech savvy who were able to do it and then, profit off.
I mean, in fairness,
tickets.
it does seem like they were obviously, inundated with requests. Is there any kind of curiosity? Would you want to see the gigs, on DVD or online when they...
I really just love the fact that 14 million people are this excited. And I think it's lovely because I think music is one of our greatest cultural exports. And actually, British music in particular really punches above its weight globally. And that's why we can't let AI ruin it. And so I think it's really an important moment just to remind everyone how important British music has been through the 90s and now.
And, they really did symbolise the whole Cool Britannia movement at the time. Anita Boateng, Joanna Jarjue, stay with us. Coming up, is Prince Harry plotting a return to royal life in the UK? We'll be right back.
we've restored 25,000 hectares. That's equivalent of twice the size of Manchester, or similar number, 25,000 rugby pitches. It's an enormous area across our estate in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. And it's hugely exciting to see this work coming to fruition. And that's working with our ranger and countryside teams, as well as tenant farmers and other partners, to help make more space for nature, which is absolutely critical in meeting the nature and climate emergencies. What we've been really focused on over the last decade is making our sites better for wildlife. That means improving the quality of the natural habitat with them. And we've also been extending these areas to help join up these patches of wildlife-rich habitat across the landscape. That's really important because it allows species to kind of move across landscapes, which is a critical response to challenges like climate change. And so this has been a huge amount of work by everybody involved: countryside ranger teams, tenant farmers, as well as our partners. And it's seen us drive, help return some of the wildlife back into the countryside, and is a really good, solid start for reversing the decline of species, for example. We're starting off from a low base. We're one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world, and it means that the work to restore nature is absolutely critical. It's not only critical for the wildlife involved, of course, but nature provides us with so many benefits, and often these are poorly understood. But for example, the 9,000 hectares of peatland restoration not only helps lock away the carbon in those soils, our largest carbon stocks in the UK, but also helps absorb rainwater to reduce flood risk. It also cleans water and saves us lots of money in terms of maintaining clean water in our rivers, and indeed in our drinking water as well.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me now, former Conservative Special Advisor Anita Boateng and the broadcaster Joanna Jarjue. Okay, let's go straight to the Sunday Telegraph and a story here from page. Top earners already fleeing Britain ahead of tax raids. Telegraph saying wealthy individuals and entrepreneurs already leaving the UK as fears grow over a raft of tax rises in Rachel Reeves' first budget, which we have been told is going to be painful, Anita.
Yes, the Iron Chancellor is soon to strike. So yes, we definitely have these reports of people fleeing or potentially fleeing the UK. And in particular, this story is about capital gains tax, where it's kind of hard to compare internationally, but Britain arguably has a slightly lower capital gains tax, particularly kind of income tax dividends, for instance.
Because that's one of the taxes that people think might rise.
Exactly. And it's been well telegraphed, so I think it would be surprising if it didn't go up. But the interesting question that's asked in this article is really about the growth mission. You know, Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves said that's their primary mission. And so the question is, as this piece says, you know, entrepreneurs are very mobile. So if you want that investment, you have a combination potentially of higher inheritance tax, non-doms, VAT on private schools. How does that all come together to deliver the kind of an entrepreneurial economy that delivers the growth you need for public services? So the potential that this is a little short-sighted.
Okay. Anna?
Well, I think that we need to make a decision in this country whether we're going to put up with what we've had in the last 14 years in terms of non-dom tax statuses, in terms of things that we've seen with Tory sleaze, and really the people at the top of the food chain being the people who benefit the most, or whether we're going to have a fairer society. And there has to be a dividing line between Labour and the Conservatives. I know that there's certain things, you know, in addition to capital gains tax, like inheritance tax, like the VAT on private schools, but I really believe that when it comes down to it, it's always kind of like a scare tactic that people use, these wealth advisors, to obviously protect their clients. And when it comes down to it, people will live in this country if they want to, because it's a great country overall.
We'll find out after the budget. Let's go to the Mail on Sunday now about Prince Harry. Harry asks former aides to help plot his return from exile. Joanna, what are the details about this story? How do we know he's planning to return?
So apparently, Harry isn't kind of satisfied with some of the advice that he's been getting from the US, and he's kind of been getting advice from image-based experts over there on how he can more so rehabilitate his own image in the UK. Some of the sources have said that Harry and Meghan have spent the last 4 years, you know, in kind of self-imposed exile, and obviously he's very concerned about his public image. He's due to be coming back to the UK as well for the Invictus Games. So I think that he's trying to kind of rehabilitate where he is in terms of the public image over here after, obviously, leaving the royal family.
What do you make of it? Does it matter to the nation still, do you think?
I mean, it probably does. Is it likely that this is what's happening? I don't know. We'll see.
Okay, let's go to the Sunday Telegraph. We've got 1 minute left, but it's an interesting story. Front page of the Telegraph: stop testing children on times tables, unions tell ministers. So, and this is obviously primary school children. What are the details?
Yeah, basically, the teachers' unions have been urging the government to scrap these timetables tests that were brought back in 2018, and also get rid of other things like teaching of grammar. And I think what's interesting, and it's definitely worth a read in this piece, is it kind of takes you through some of the kind of socio-economic impacts of this, really, like what kinds of kids naturally learn grammar and which kids don't. You know, Nick Gibb, former Conservative minister, pushes back quite strongly against this. And obviously, we have seen improvement in school standards under the Conservatives. So there's a kind of question about whether people knowing and being able to recite times tables isn't in fact a positive. So let's see.
Joanna, 30 seconds.
Well, it's quite the contrast to what Rishi Sunak was talking about in terms of extending the amount of time that people are studying maths. But I do think that it can be a pressure, yes, but also we've got to be competitive in terms of the children that we're raising in this country internationally. And if we need to test them to make sure they're at the right standard, then so be it.
OK. Anita, Joanna, we're going to have to leave it there for now, but we'll see you again in the next hour to go through the papers again. Coming up next on Sky News at 11, we'll have more on our top story on the 2 deaths following the Notting Hill Carnival.